Hello everyone, hope you're all doing good. Myself Tanuja and we are discussing biology today. We're discussing a very interesting and very important and very small chapter of our plus 2 biology, which is evolution. Okay, so you all know what evolution is. Some may believe in it and some may not. It's fine if you believe in it or not, because today I'll be teaching you what evolution is. I'll be teaching you how it went on. I'll be teaching you some theories, and also I'll be giving you some proofs of evolution as well, some evidences of evolution as well. Okay, so this is a very important topic, but it's a very simple topic. Okay, so if I tell you what we're going to discuss in this chapter, we'll mainly discuss about the story of how life originated on Earth and how Earth originated. Okay, we'll be learning about the origin of Earth as a planet, and we'll also learn about origin of life. We'll learn how universe originated and how it developed into how it is right now, and we'll also learn how life originated on Earth and how it developed into how it is right now. Okay, that is the evolution of life forms, okay, or biodiversity. How we have a lot of diverse organisms, plants in the Earth right now, in our planet right now. Okay, so that's what we'll be discussing in this particular chapter. And the first section, let me get into the first section without any further ado. The first section is origin of life. How did life originate on Earth? You may have your own theories, okay. Science has its own theories. Let me teach you some of them. Okay, so if you look at life, okay, it was not in the old times, okay, when Earth originated as a planet, we didn't have life then, okay, but then slowly life originated. So what did life originate from? Let's look into it. Okay, you may not know it right now, but let's look into it. Okay, how did life originate and how did it grow into such a biodiverse condition? If we look at the universe, it's about 20 billion years old. Okay, how old is the universe? The whole universe, not just the Earth. The Earth, the solar system, the Milky Way galaxy, and all of the galaxies is together comprising the universe. And the universe is about 20 billion. I'm not talking about million here. I'm talking about billion. It's about 20 billion years old. Okay, so how did the universe originate? In the beginning, as I already told you, there are huge galaxies which comprise the universe, and the galaxies contain stars like sun, and you have systems, right? A solar system which comprises of the star sun as the main star, and you have clouds of gas and dust which we call planets, right? So planets are basically nothing but clouds, or they're basically dust, right? They're basically dust and gas. Okay, and then you have if you look at the size of the universe, we can actually see that Earth is just a speck, because inside the whole universe you have a lot of galaxies, and it's just Milky Way galaxy is just one of the many galaxies that you have. And if you look at the Milky Way galaxy, you have a lot of systems which surrounds a particular star, and sun is just one of them, right? And if you look at the solar system, you have many planets revolving around the sun, and Earth is just one of them, right? So Earth is actually a speck, a point when we look at the universe as a whole. And as you know, if you try to explain the origin of the universe, the most important theory, which you may have already heard about, is the Big Bang theory. So what does the Big Bang theory actually say? The Big Bang theory says that there was a huge explosion. There was a single huge explosion that took place, and this explosion, which we can't even define, which we can't imagine, okay, which we can't imagine or define in physical terms. It was such a big explosion, and as a result of this explosion, the universe expanded. So the universe was a small thing, or it was just nothing, but then after this explosion, the universe expanded and the temperature came down. Just imagine you are standing in a small room. It's tight, it's very small, so you'll feel hot, right? But if you're standing in a big room, if you have air circulation, then of course it will be more cool. So in similar ways, okay, as the universe expanded, the temperature also came down. The universe became more cool and cool. And as the temperature came down, the first gases that formed in the universe was hydrogen and helium. Okay, hydrogen and helium are the first gases to be formed in the universe. Okay, hydrogen and helium, and these gases start started to condense, okay, to liquefy under gravitational force, and that is how galaxies were formed, okay. So gases started forming and these gases started condensing, and that's how galaxies were formed in the present universe, okay. And then you had the solar system of the Milky Way galaxy, and that's where Earth, our planet, lies, okay. So now I guess you've got an idea of how the Big Bang theory happened and how it resulted in the expansion of the universe, okay. If we look at Earth originated about 4.5 billion years back, okay. So if we look at universe originated about 20 billion years ago, and Earth, our planet Earth, originated about 4.5 billion years ago, okay. Remember these points. And at the beginning, where during the origin of Earth, there was no atmosphere on early Earth. There was no atmosphere as we see today, okay. There were only few gases, some of them being water vapor, methane, carbon dioxide and ammonia. So water vapor is H2O, okay, it's not water, it's water vapor. And then you have methane, okay, which is CH4, and then you have carbon dioxide, which is CO2, and you have ammonia, which is NH3 or NH4 plus, okay. Ammonium ion is NH4 plus and ammonia is NH3. So these were the only four gases that you could see in the on the early Earth, okay. And what actually happened was, the sun obviously emits UV rays, ultraviolet rays, and these ultraviolet rays from the sun broke the water vapor into hydrogen and oxygen. So this is water vapor, and this was broken down into H2 and O by UV rays from the sun, okay. I hope you understand that. And this hydrogen and oxygen, okay, what did this hydrogen and oxygen become? This oxygen combined with the ammonia that's left, okay, this oxygen combined with the ammonia, NH3, and also methane, it also reacted with methane, and as a result water was formed, okay. As a result water was formed, also more carbon dioxide was formed. So this is how water evolved on Earth, okay. So water vapor was there and it was split into hydrogen ion and oxygen ion with the help of UV rays or UV light from the sun, and this oxygen then combined with ammonia and methane, ammonia or methane, okay, and as a result water and carbon dioxide was formed. So this is what actually took place, okay. Also the oxygen, okay, the oxygen started combining and the ozone layer started to form, because ozone is nothing but three oxygen molecules standing together. It is O3. So oxygen molecule released this way started combining to form the ozone layer, okay. And as Earth started cooling, as the temperature came down, further down, the water vapor started liquefying and it came down as in the form of rain, okay, in the form of rain. And you should imagine the Earth had a lot of depression then, okay, it has a lot of depressions back then, and as the water vapor cooled, it rained a lot, and that's how these depressions were filled and the oceans that you see now was formed. So you should imagine the oceans which we don't even know the depth of was depressions on planet Earth before, and then the water vapor came down as water, as rain, and that's how those depressions got filled in the form of ocean, okay. So I hope you understood that point. Now moving on, okay, this was just an image just to show you how Earth was before, how the early Earth was. It was like a molten globe, but now, right now Earth is the best place that you can live in, is the only place that you can live in, okay. So that's about our origin of Earth, okay. Now how did life arrive, okay. So according to scientists, life arrived about 500 million years after the formation of Earth, that is about 4 billion years back. So what did I tell you? Universe arrived 20 billion years ago. Earth arrived about 4.5 billion years ago, and after 500 million years, life arrived, that is about 4 billion years ago. It's all in billion, okay. So universe arrived 20 billion years ago, Earth arrived 4.5 billion years ago, and life arrived on Earth 4 billion years ago. That's what scientists believe. So how did life come to Earth? Did it come from outer space? So you have many theories regarding this. I'll tell you each one of them. It's really simple, it's really easy to understand. So many people had different beliefs, and all those were different theories. The first theory that you have is the panspermia theory. So according to the panspermia theory, people believed, or it was mainly believed by Greek thinkers at the early stage. So the early Greek thinkers thought that there were some units that contained life, which they called spores, and these spores were transferred into different planets from the outer space, and Earth was one of those planets. Okay, so according to panspermia theory, some units of life called spores were transferred to our planet from outer space. So that's what they believed. It's known as the panspermia theory. And then you had the theory of spontaneous evolution, the theory of spontaneous evolution or spontaneous generation. What it means, spontaneous means something that happens quickly, right? So what does the theory of spontaneous generation say? Theory of spontaneous generation says that life originated from dead and decaying matter like mud or straw. Okay, so that's what theory of spontaneous generation says, that life originated from non-living or dead substances. Okay, that is what theory of spontaneous generation believed in. So that's the second theory. But this theory got dismissed really quick. How did it get dismissed? It was mainly dismissed by a person called Louis Pasteur. You may have heard about Louis Pasteur. So what did Louis Pasteur say? Louis Pasteur conducted an experiment, and by his experiment he proved that life only arrives from pre-existing life. He didn't explain where life came from. He didn't understand that, but he proved a point. He proved that life only came from pre-existing cells. So how did he prove this? What was the experiment that he conducted? I'll show you. He took 2 flasks. Okay, he took 2 flasks, and what he did was, in one flask, okay, in one flask was completely open. Okay, so you had a lot of microbes over here. So as you already know, our air is not sterilized. Okay, our air has a lot of microbes. So there was a lot of microbes in the air. Okay, there were a lot of microbes, and this bowl was not open. This bowl was not closed. It was left open. It was not sterilized. Nothing was happening. And you put some killed yeast into this. What did he put? He put some killed yeast into this. Okay, or simply saying, he put some yeast into this. Okay, and he waited. And when he waited, he saw that there was growth happening. There was growth of new yeast happening from this particular bowl. Okay, but the growth only happened when it was exposed, or when it was exposed to microbes, or when it was exposed to other life. So microbes are also life, right? So growth only happened. Growth of new yeast only happened when it was exposed to other life. He also had another flask which was closed and which was completely sterilized. So there was no microbes over here. There was no microbial connection or contact or anything like that. So there was particularly no life at all. And he put killed yeast into this, and he observed that no new yeast was growing. Okay, no new yeast was growing. So over here there was no new yeast growing, but in this case, when it was exposed to another life, yeast was growing. So by this simple experiment, he said that life can only arrive, or life can only grow or originate if there is pre-existing life. Okay, otherwise life won't originate. So this was a simple experiment that he conducted. Okay, and by this experiment, the spontaneous generation theory was completely dismissed. Okay, but as I already told you, Louis Pasteur was not able to tell you how or from where life arrived. He was just able to tell you that life would only arrive from pre-existing life. It wouldn't arrive from something that's dead or decaying, like mud or straw. So that was the only thing that he could prove. But the question still remained. The question of where actually life came from still remained. Okay, and who answered that question? That question was answered by a very important theory of chemical evolution. So very, very, very important theory as far as evolution is concerned. Okay, theory of chemical evolution. And there were 2 proposers for this theory. The first person was Oparin, and the second person was Haldane. Okay, so Oparin was the first person, and the second person was Haldane. Okay, so these 2 scientists put forward the theory of chemical evolution. So what did they actually say in this particular theory? They both said that first form of life could have come from pre-existing non-living organic molecules like RNA or protein. Okay, so they didn't actually say that life came from mud or straw, but they said it came from organic substances like RNA and protein. So they said that first in earth chemical evolution took place. What do you mean by chemical evolution? Chemical evolution means the formation of chemicals like RNA and protein and all that. Okay, so they said that chemical evolution took place and RNA and protein and other organic molecules were formed, and from these organic molecules life arose. Okay, so according to the theory of chemical evolution, the formation of life was preceded by chemical evolution. That is, chemical evolution happened before the formation of life. Okay, so this is what Oparin and Haldane proposed. So this was the theory of chemical evolution. They also said that on the early earth there was such a condition where the temperature was really high. Okay, there were volcanic storms happening, and the atmosphere was reducing, which contained only some gases like methane, ammonia, etc. Okay, so this is what they said, but this was just a theory. They couldn't actually prove it. Okay, they could propose a theory, but they couldn't prove it, and that's where someone else comes into picture. Who is that someone else? Stanley Miller. Okay, Stanley Miller was the person to actually prove this theory via an experiment. What was the experimental setup of Stanley Miller? It's actually really simple. Stanley Miller tried to recreate the conditions that Oparin and Haldane told in their theory. So they've already told that the conditions of Earth was the Earth was having high temperature, there were volcanic storms happening, there were only some gases like ammonia, methane, etc. So what Stanley Miller did was he created similar conditions in a laboratory scale, in a small scale. Okay, he did this in 1953. So what he did was he created an electric discharge because there were volcanic storms. So in order to imitate that, he created an electric discharge using electrodes. Okay, and then he electric discharge into a flask that contained gases like methane, hydrogen, ammonia and water vapor at a very high temperature, about 8,000 degrees Celsius. It's not 80, it's not 800, it is 8,000. So this was his experimental setup, and he observed that after a period of time, amino acids started forming. So amino acids, as you already know, are organic compounds. So amino acids started forming. Okay, and many other people after this was a very phenomenal experiment, because it actually proved the theory of chemical evolution. So we actually realized how life originated. Life originated from organic molecules. So chemical evolution took place in the earth, and organic molecules like RNA, proteins, amino acids, carbohydrates, nucleic acids started forming, and from those organic molecules it came to life. That's what actually happened. So this was proved by Stanley Miller. So it was a very phenomenal experiment, and after Stanley Miller's experiment, many other experiments were conducted by many other scientists all over the world, and they observed that in similar conditions, sugars, nitrogen bases, pigments and fats, which are all part of life, all part of a living organism, were forming. Okay, so this could actually prove the theory of evolution. Okay, so with this evidence, chemical evolution was completely accepted by the people that lived at that time, and still chemical evolution is the widely accepted and believed theory for how life originated on Earth. Okay, so I'll just show you a picture of the experimental setup of Stanley Miller. It's a very important picture because you will be asked this for your exams. So what did actually Stanley Miller have? So he actually had a flask, okay, and via electrodes he gave spark discharges because there were volcanic storms. So in order to imitate that, he gave electricity. There were lightning and all happening, so he gave electricity, and then he filled some gases, he filled the flask with some gases like methane, ammonia, water vapor and hydrogen. It's not water, it's water vapor, these are all gases, okay. And he also put a condenser, he had a water inlet, he had a water outlet, okay, and water droplets were collected over here after the condensation. So why did he do the condensing? Because he wanted to analyze these gases, but it's really difficult to analyze what happened inside this flask if it's in a gaseous form. So he was condensing it down to in a liquid form like this, and he collected it down here, okay, he collected it down here, by analyzing that water, he could understand that amino acids were formed. So this is what actually Stanley Miller's experimental setup looked like. Okay, so I hope that's clear. Now moving on, so this is Stanley Miller. Okay, so Stanley Miller, who in 1953 proved the theory of evolution by his phenomenal experiment. Okay, I hope that's clear. Now, still there's a question remaining. Okay, now we know where life originated from. Life originated from organic molecules like RNA, proteins, nucleic acids, nitrogen bases, pigments, fats, etc. But what was the first molecule? Which was the first molecule of life? Which organism was first formed? Okay, what was the first molecule which we could define as life? That was the next question that we had to face. Okay, and scientists believe that the first non-cellular forms of life originated about 3 billion years back. Okay, so let me take you back. Universe originated about 20 billion years back. I'll be repeating this because it's really important for you to have an idea about evolution. Universe originated about 20 billion years back. Our Earth originated about 4.5 billion years ago, and life originated about 4 billion years ago. And in that, the first non-cellular form, okay, not cellular form but non-cellular form evolved 3 billion years ago. Okay, 3 billion years ago. Non-cellular forms. I'm not talking about cellular forms here, but I'm talking about non-cellular forms. Okay, and it could have been molecules like RNA, protein, polysaccharides. RNA, protein and polysaccharides, all of these are just molecules. They're not cells. Okay, they're just molecules, right? So they're just giant molecules like RNA, protein, polysaccharides, etc. were formed about 3 billion years back. Okay, and these molecules started dividing, right? If there was one molecule, they started dividing into two, but these were just molecules and not cells. Okay, these were not cells, these were just giant molecules. Okay, and later on the first cellular form of life arrived about 2000 million years ago. So the non-cellular forms arrived about 3 billion years ago, and after a long period, a long gap, cellular life arrived, cells arrived. Okay, cellular life forms arrived about 2000 million years ago. It's 2000 million and not billion. Okay, 2000 million years ago. So that's how cellular forms arrived, and these are probably single cell, because of course single cell then later into multiple cells, later develop into multiple cells, right? So this was single cells, and as we already know, maybe some of you guys may know, all life forms were arrived in water environment. Okay, and then it gradually developed into land. Okay, so that's what that's a small version of how life arrived. Okay, so that is the version of biogenesis, of how the first form of life arised. Okay, so that was accepted by a lot of people. Okay, so what we actually understood from this topic is that life arised from inorganic, or let me be clear, organic molecules. Okay, were there, organic molecules were there like RNA and protein, and from this life arose. Okay, so that's what we understood. And RNA and protein, organic molecules, were arrived about 3 billion years ago, and life as in the form of cellular forms arrived about 2000 million years ago. Okay, so I hope that's clear. Now the next question that we had to face is, how could the first cellular form, which was just a single cell, how could this single cell develop into the biodiversity, the extensive biodiversity that we see right now on Earth? How did that happen? I mean, look at an algae. An algae is completely different from what a human is, right? I mean, a human can do a lot of things that the algae can't, and the algae can do a thing that the human can't, which is photosynthesis, right? So there's a huge gap from a primitive plant like algae to a very complex animal like us. So how did that biodiversity take place? How did evolution of life forms that they are now as such happen? So that's the question that we had to face today. And of course there were many theories. This comes under the section 6.2, which is evolution of life forms. How did life forms evolve? There were many theories, and the first one, the most accepted one during that time, was of course some supernatural power, right? Some supernatural power brought life forms into this earth, and that was known as the theory of special creation. It was known as the theory of special creation. What does theory of evolution actually, the theory of special creation actually tell us? The theory of special creation is usually found in conventional religious literature textbooks, and it says that all living organisms that you see right now, all the species, all the types that we see today, were created as such. Okay, they were like this when they were created about 400 years before. So according to theory of special creation, life arose in earth, or the earth developed, or earth originated about 4,000 years before, and 4,000 years ago, and the life was created as such. There was no evolution. There is nothing in the name of evolution didn't take place. Everything was created as such by some supernatural power. So this is what theory of special creation says. Okay, and this theory was strongly challenged during mainly the 19th century. Okay, and when this theory was challenged, there was someone else who came into the picture. This is someone who's very important if we look at evolution, the topic of evolution. Do you know him? Do you recognize him? He is no one but he's none other than Charles Darwin. You may have all heard about Charles Darwin and his theory of evolution, right? So that's what we are going to learn now. Who was Charles Darwin and what did he do? So Charles Darwin actually conducted a sea voyage. Okay, so he started from his home, and he thought that he'll learn about evolution. So in order to learn about evolution, he can't sit at home, right? He'll have to observe the nature. So in order for observing the nature, he started a sea voyage in his ship known as the HMS Beagle. So this was the name of the ship that he was traveling in, the HMS Beagle. And what he actually observed was that he observed that existing living forms, that the life form that you see today, share similarities among themselves and with life forms that existed million years before. So what did he actually observe? That the existing life the life that you actually see now has a lot of similarities with each other, because if you look at each other, cat and tiger. Cat and tiger actually has a lot of similarities. I mean, cat looks like a small baby version of a tiger, doesn't it? I mean, if we look at the cat and from different angles, if you looked at a zoomed out photograph of a cat, you can actually see a lot of similarities with tiger. So the existing organisms that exist right now have a lot of similarities between them, and it also has similarities between the organisms that are now extinct but that existed millions of years ago. So how can we use this information? I'll tell you. Okay, so according to this, he said that many life forms that I said that million years ago existed does not exist right now. Okay, and from this information we realized that there has been a gradual evolution of life. So from the organism that existed million years ago, the organism that you see right now evolved. Okay, developed. So the organism, the life forms that you see right now was not created as such, but it was evolved from old life forms, or evolved from life forms that don't exist right now. Okay, so this was Charles Darwin's ideas, and this idea completely dismissed one theory that you learned before. The theory of special creation was completely dismissed by Charles Darwin and his theory of evolution. Okay, so this is the ship that he traveled in, the HMS Beagle. Okay, and in his theory of evolution, he had two very most important topics. The first one was natural selection, and the second one was survival of the fittest. So you'll hear this term a lot in this chapter because it's really important as far as evolution is concerned. So what is natural selection and what is survival of the fittest? As the name suggests, natural selection means nature selects. Okay, nature actually provides a lot of conditions for selecting the most fit species, or the most fit variety, and only the most fit variety can survive. That's survival of the fittest. So simply saying, if I give you a brief outline, this is what the concept actually is. Okay, if we look at it in detail, what Darwin said was, some organisms survive better in a natural conditions, and hence they would survive or they would outbreed the others. So the ones that are more fit would obviously win nature's selection. Okay, and in by this fitness, okay, the word fitness, he doesn't mean the muscles or the kind of fitness that you think, but according to Darwin, fitness referred ultimately to reproductive fitness. So if you made more number of progenies, you were more fit. Okay, the organisms that were capable of producing more number of progenies were considered more fit. Okay, that was how Charles Darwin considered it. Okay. And he said that the organisms that leave more progeny would survive more, and hence they are selected by nature. The other ones would perish. Okay, that's what he believed, and he called this natural selection, and implied this was the main reason for evolution. He considered natural selection as the main reason, main mechanism of evolution. So many organisms were extinct, or many organisms were perished because they were not fit. They were not reproductively fit, and that way they were extinct, or they were washed out from the earth. And those organisms who are able to reproduce, or who are reproductively fit, developed and won in the nature's selection process. So that's what Charles Darwin said. And while we learn about Charles Darwin, we should also not forget about Alfred Wallace. Who is Alfred Wallace? Alfred Wallace was also a naturalist who came out with almost similar concepts similar to Darwin. Okay, he worked in Malay Archipelago. So if you remember, if you recall, or maybe you may not know it right now, actually Darwin worked at a lot of places, including the Galapagos Island. Okay, here the Alfred Wallace, he was also a naturalist who worked in the Malay Archipelago. So archipelago, as you know, is a group of islands, right? So in the he worked in the Malay Archipelago, and he also came to similar conclusions of what Darwin had said. Okay, so you should not forget that name. I'll show you Alfred Wallace. So this is Alfred Wallace, Sir Alfred Wallace. He had also found a lot of important things. So while we learn about Charles Darwin, we should also not forget to learn about Alfred Wallace. Okay, so that was the theory of evolution by Charles Darwin, and from this theory we also got to know about a lot of different concepts. We got to understand that all the existing life forms share similarities and share common ancestors. That means they were a single organism, and all the rest of the organism developed from this organism, and in that way these organisms that you see today originated from a single ancestor. So we got to know about topics like this from Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. Okay, and these ancestors were present at different periods. Okay, so if you look at the biology, if you look at the geological history of Earth, there were different periods. Okay, there is if you have seen the movie Ice Age, right, there are different epochs, there are different eras, there were different periods, right? There were the Ice Age, there were different periods, Stone Age and all that. So there were different periods in Earth. There were different eras. I'll show you the picture later on. Okay, I'll obviously show you the picture when we learn more about evolution. I'll mention some eras also. So you should know that the biological history of how life arrived on Earth, that's known as the biological history, and the biological history of Earth actually correlates with the geological history of Earth. Okay, so that's one point that we understood from the theory of evolution. So actually from this theory of evolution we got to know a very important concept, that is the Earth is very old. It's about 4.5 billion years old, and not for just 4,000 years ago. Who said it was 4,000 years ago? Some theory of special creation told us that Earth was 4,000 years old. That is completely dismissed by Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, because Earth was not 4,000 years old as we thought, but instead it's very old. It could be about 4.5 billion years ago. Okay, or it could be about 4.5 billion years old. Okay, so I hope you understood this topic. The next concept, the next topic, the next concept in your NCERT textbook is a question, which is, what are the evidences for evolution? So I told you about evolution. I was telling you for the last a few minutes what evolution is, how evolution took place, but you may have a question inside your mind. You may ask, how should I believe all this? I mean, show me evidences. We are all people, we are all smart people, we only believe things unless and until we get evidences for it, right? So of course evolution also has its own evidences. So that's our next topic, evidences for evolution. in this section, you actually have to learn about a lot of different evidences. You have paleontological evidences, you have embryological evidences, you have morphological evidences, you have anatomical evidences, you have a lot of evidences, okay. In this video, I will be discussing the first two evidences, which are the paleontological and the embryological evidence. Okay, they are very small topics. So what do you mean by paleontological evidences? This is the first type of evidence that you have. It's nothing but fossils. Okay, evidences that we obtain from fossil records are known as paleontological evidences. And what do you mean by fossils? Fossils are remnants or remains of hard parts of life forms found in rocks. So what actually happens is that there will be life forms on Earth. Okay, life forms on Earth. It could be any life forms. Let's imagine it's humans. So we die. Okay, we die, and as we die, we are buried in the ground, right? We are buried. Okay. Where did the hand go when I buried the human? So humans, we die. Whatever the organism is, we die, and we are buried into the in the soil. And what happens is that other soil layers, okay, more soil layers gets added on the top. I'm struggling to erase this. I'm struggling to erase this I. Okay, I'll tell you. Other soil layers starts to form on this particular soil. Okay, so rocks break and soil is formed. Okay, anyways, many soil layers are formed about this particular body. Okay, or this particular skeleton. And what happens is that due to this, there will be no contact contact with environment. Okay, there will be no contact with the outer environment for this particular skeleton, and in that way the particular skeleton or the hard part of this particular organism gets preserved in rocks. Okay, so if we go down and if we take these rocks and if we observe the rock, we can actually see the skeleton or the hard part, the exoskeleton or the endoskeleton lying at the exactly same position as it how it was in the earlier stages. Okay, so that's what paleontological evidences are. So fossils, as I already told you, are remains of hard parts of life form. Okay, and some of them appear similar to modern organisms, and that's how we actually compare the fossils. Okay, as we get new fossils, we compare it with the organisms that we see around us. Okay, and if they are similar, we could say that this particular organism lived million years ago, and it is similar. It is somehow similar to the organism that's living now. So maybe the organism that is living now arrived from this particular organism, or this organism that lived million years ago is an ancestor of the organism that is living now. So we can actually find a relationship between the organisms living now and that lived million years ago. Okay, so that's what paleontological evidences actually do. Okay, so these organisms which are extinct, we identify it during using fossils. Okay, that example is dinosaurs, right? Nobody have seen dinosaurs, but we have fossil evidences that say that dinosaurs actually were present in the earth and they were extinct. Okay, so a study of fossils actually helps us to understand at what time, at what geological period the organism was in, because you have a lot of methods. If you get a particular rock with a fossil, there are actually a lot of methods like carbon dating and all that to identify the age of the rock. So if we identify the age of the rock, we can obviously identify the age of the organism, right? It could be million years ago, it could be billion years ago. It's easy to identify, it's easy to observe. Okay, so from this paleontological evidences, we realized that there were a lot of organisms that lived million years ago, which is similar to the organism that we see now. So these organisms evolved from the previous organism due to many reasons. Okay, so evolution is clearly proved with paleontological evidences. I'll actually show you some pictures. Okay, so this is a picture that you can see in your NCERT textbook. So here you can see a lot of dinosaurs. Right, you can see a dinosaurs and how it evolved. You can see this in the fossil. Okay, see, some fossils are even kept in the museum. So this is a rock, and you can see the exoskeleton or the endoskeleton completely preserved in the rock. Right, so this is what actually takes place in the case of fossils and paleontological evidences. So this is one of the most important evidences of evolution, the paleontological evidences or the study of fossils. Okay, now moving on, we have the next evidence, the second evidence, which is the embryological evidences. What do you mean by embryo? Embryo is nothing but I think you already know what an embryo is. Sperm and ovum, the gametes fuse to form a zygote, and this zygote develops into an embryo. So embryo is nothing but a small stage of any organism, right? When the organism is in the seed, inside the seed or inside the mother's uterus, you have it in the embryo form. Okay, so that is what an embryo is. So in the embryological evidences, you have to learn the name of two important scientists. Okay, the first scientist that you have to learn is about Ernest Haeckel. Okay, Ernest Haeckel is the first person, and the second person is Carl Ernst von Baer. Okay, I'll tell you what they said. Ernest Haeckel said that certain features during the embryonic stage of some organisms are common to all vertebrates. What did he say? He said that if consider four vertebrates A, B, C and D. Consider four vertebrates. Okay, these are all vertebrates. And if we look at the embryos of all these four organisms, they have something in common. Okay, the embryo have something in common. These organisms may be completely different. A, B, C and D are completely different organisms, but they are all vertebrates. So if we look at their embryos, we can see something in common. Okay, so if we look at their embryos, there is something common. Okay, I'll give you an example. Don't worry, I'll explain it with a very beautiful example. If we look at the embryo of vertebrates, including humans, we can actually see vestigial gill slits. What are gill slits? Gill slits are nothing but you know what gills are in the case of fishes, right? You know gills, okay, through which the fishes breathe. So gill slits are nothing but where the gills actually lie. Okay, so if we look at the vertebrates, including different vertebrates, including humans, we can actually see vestigial gill slits in the embryo. Okay, in the embryo, it's only seen in the embryo and not in the adult. Okay, so vestigial gill slits, it's seen in the embryo just behind the head in all vertebrates. But in the case of fishes, okay, in the case of fish, it is a well developed organ. Okay, in the case of fish, it is found in the adult also. But in the case of any other vertebrates, if we look at any other vertebrates, it's not seen in the adult but only in the embryo. So by this way, by finding this, what is the benefit of finding this, and how does this prove evolution? This proves evolution by saying that these four vertebrates have something common in their embryonic stage, which means they could have arisen from a single ancestor. So all vertebrates that we see now has a single ancestor or could have had a single ancestor. So that's what embryological evidences actually tell us. Okay, that's what Ernest Haeckel actually told us. So this is Sir Ernest Haeckel, and I'll show you a picture of a chicken embryo and a human embryo here. Just observe the picture. Okay, so this is a chicken embryo, which is also a vertebrate, and a human embryo, which is also a vertebrate. So you can actually see that in chicken embryo and human embryo, you can see slits which are homologous to fish gill slits. Okay, so these are gill slits in the human embryo, and these are gill slits in the chicken embryo. So you can actually see gill slits only in the embryonic stage, which is similar to, or which is homologous to, the gills we actually see in the fish adult. Okay, so this is what Ernest Haeckel said. You can also observe the tail. A human embryo also has a tail. A chicken embryo also has a tail. But as human adults, do we have a tail? Apparently not. Right. So that's about chicken embryo and human embryo and the embryological evidence. That was the first scientist. And the next person was Carl Ernst von Baer, the second scientist. So what did Carl Ernst von Baer say? Carl Ernst von Baer said that the embryos of one species of course has different stages. That's fine, but it's not comparable to, like, we can't compare it to any other stages. I mean, let me tell you what he actually meant. He said that embryos could have resemblances with each other, but it could never have resemblances with an adult, or we should never compare the embryos of one organism with the adult of another organism. Okay, what did he say? I'll tell you. Let's take the previous case itself. You had four organisms, four vertebrates A, B, C, D, and you have the fish. Okay, this is the fish. Okay, so you compare all these embryos. Okay, just compare all these embryos. These are all vertebrates. Fish is also a vertebrate. So if you compare all these embryos, all of them had gill slits. Right, all these embryos had gill slits. That's fine. That's okay. You can compare embryos. There is nothing wrong with it. But if you compare the embryo of these four organisms and the adult of this, okay, if you compare all these embryos, it's fine, it's completely normal, they have gill slits. But if you compare the embryos of these four and the adult of fish, you can also see gill slits, but that's not right. Okay, what Carl Ernst von Baer said is that it's okay to compare between embryos. It's completely fine to compare between embryos of different organism, but it's not okay to compare with the embryo of some organism with the adult stage of another organism. That's not right. That's what Carl Ernst von Baer actually said. He emphasized that embryos of one species could resemble embryos of other, but not adults. Okay, so and he also said that the younger the embryo, the greater the resemblance, because if you look at this particular figure, you can obviously understand that the chicken embryo would grow into a chicken and the human embryo would grow into a human. So they're completely growing in two different ways, because chicken looks nothing like a human, right? So the chicken embryo is growing completely into a chicken and the human embryo is growing completely into a human. So as they grow older and older, as the embryo matures and keeps maturing, they'll mature into two different organisms, into two different forms, right? So if we want to compare embryos, we should compare it at the younger stage possible, because the younger the embryo, the more would be the resemblance. That's what Carl Ernst von Baer said. So that's all about embryological evidences. So in this video, we have started evidences of evolution, and I have explained to you two evidences: the paleontological evidences, which is all about fossils, and it's really simple, and I also explained to you the embryological evidences, and I've told you that you have to learn about the observations of two scientists, Ernest Haeckel and Carl Ernst von Baer. Okay, so I hope it's clear. It was nothing tough. It was a simple and small topic, right? Embryological evidences and paleontological evidences are both small topics. But the next topic that you'll study is morphological and anatomical evidences. It's also really simple, but it's kind of lengthy. Okay, so I'll be discussing that in the next video. So till we meet then, stay safe, take care, bye bye.